Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. The show is about to start. Hey guys, what's up? This is Phoebe.
And this is Mike.
This is the Mike and Phoebe Show. And today we are talking to Amber Royer. Amber is the president and CEO of Out of the Ashes organization out of Hemet. Hi, Amber.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
Happy Monday.
Yes, happy Monday.
As if anybody ever said that, right?
It's definitely a Monday. We got to get the brain cells working a little bit, get the mouth, brain cells. Okay, connect the brain to the mouth, connect.
A couple extra cups of coffee, get you moving.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy that you're able to join us. Now, Amber, we met through the Hemet San Jacinto Chamber of Commerce. Shout out to Kevin and Cindy. Hey.
Hey.
Woo, woo.
I think I wanted to say Kevin and Cindy at the same time. That's a new one, right?
They are awesome.
I know. We love them so much. And so we met at one of the mixers, and Amber, she's the president of Out of the Ashes organization. Now, Out of the Ashes organization is a family-based nonprofit organization established in 2023. Knowing firsthand how illicit fentanyl can change lives, President and CEO Amber Royer has made it her goal to share her experience by trying to save as many lives as possible. And I wanted to share a little bit about her bio. Amber's bio is on her website, and I shortened it just a little bit, but this is just as powerful and sobering to me. Out in August 2016, brought forth a whole new set of challenges when her 16-year-old son was significantly injured in a BMX bike trauma. During this time, Richard was introduced to opioids for pain management. He was given powerful medications such as morphine, fentanyl, propofol, Vicodin, and Percocet, among others. Most of these medications were given every 2 hours in rotation for an extended amount of time. Being 16, the risk of addiction was very high. Richard came home and they tried holistic medication and creams. Amber had to fight to get her son into managed pain control due to his age. Anxiety and depression are now mixed with the opioids and the upbringing of his newborn child. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic. The world spirals into mass chaos and everything shuts down, including doctors' offices. That includes mental health facilities and pain management. Richard now is in pain and he sought to self-medicate and was sold a fake Percocet, a counterfeit prescription pill that was pressed with fentanyl. Richard died in the bathroom of his family home. Together, Out of the Ashes organization had to be a voice for Richard to spread the word about the dangers of fentanyl poisoning, opioid use in teenagers that suffered traumatic injuries, and the addiction versus self-medicating in today's society. To work with other groups and organizations to fight for fentanyl legislation and share in the battle against social media and our children. To help the community with the influx of fentanyl-related deaths by passing out naloxone and sharing resources and information for treatment centers, helping families cope with the loss and to be supportive in their times of need. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Your bio, when I read it, was so powerful, so sobering, but at the same time, sadly, a little bit inspiring, I feel, and I say that with the most compassion and empathy, because as we all go through tragedies in life, we learn to thrive afterwards. And that to me is like, it's bittersweet.
Absolutely. And the mix that we work with, we call it turning our pain into purpose, because, you go through the grief and we still walk in grief every day. Grief never leaves us. We just learn how to live with it. And I cannot let others follow in my path knowing what I know. I knew that I had to get out there and let people know what was happening to our loved ones.
Right. And, it's so moving for you to be open and be vulnerable to the public, the community. When you're out there, I really look up to you, Amber, because I honestly don't have that bravery. And, you do inspire people by putting your message out there, by fighting for Richard and going through his loss, but also knowing that you're going to be helping people too. That's so powerful.
Thank you, Phoebe. That's all we can hope for is just, one life, and then they can lead somebody else, and that ripple effect.
Yes, absolutely. Now let's go into the questions that you sent over. So what exactly is Out of the Ashes organization? What is your nonprofit's mission? And what are your goals that you hope to accomplish?
Well, Out of the Ashes organization was born out of tragedy. I like to term our organization as accidental activists, because I was not planning on starting a nonprofit organization when I came into this. I knew that I wanted to get out there and educate and spread awareness, and then it just kind of went hand in hand with the nonprofit sector. I've had for-profit businesses, and I was a nurse for over 23 years of my life. So the whole nonprofit world is new to me, but I'm learning, and our capacity is growing, and I'm very grateful that. So our mission statement, by spreading awareness, by providing education on the risks associated with fentanyl and other dangerous drugs, our organization aims to empower individuals. We want to give them that power to make informed decisions about their health and well-being. Through harm reduction strategies, we seek to minimize the negative impact of substance use and support those in need of help. Our focus on youth intervention and the importance of early intervention, the support for young individuals, you may say, who may be vulnerable to substance use. We cannot eradicate this drug, so we must educate the public. We also challenge the stigma surrounding overdose and addiction. Our organization encourages open discussions and compassion to those who are affected by these issues. We recognize the role of social media in shaping the perceptions and behaviors that are related to drug use. We like to highlight the need for responsible online engagement and accurate information dissemination. We realize that in today's ever-evolving drug landscape, our organization, we emphasize the potential dangers of drug-induced homicide, the importance of vigilance in recognizing and reporting suspicious activities through a multifaceted approach. We are dedicated to creating a safer, more informed community where individuals in our community feel supported and empowered to make those positive choices. Now, let me just clarify what I mean about drug-induced homicide. And that's a whole new term, because there's two terms out there, and we like to say overdose. The definition of an overdose is an excessive use of drug. That's what the dictionary determines that. In a drug-induced homicide, when someone is taking a substance, whether it be a pill, whether it's smoking a marijuana substance, whether it's using a different type of drug, if they're deceived and fentanyl is included in that and they end up dying, they're being deceived to death. So that is why we say drug-induced homicide, because the unlawful delivery of a controlled substance that results in a death is a drug-induced homicide. So it's important to recognize distinguish the difference between the two.
Absolutely. And, in your bio, I was reading the more of the services that you also provide. And I read that you advocate for legislation and legislative changes, right, to hold fentanyl distributors accountable. So how do you do that? How do you work on the legal side to advocate for that?
We have been introducing bills, working with various senators and supporters, co-authors on various bills. Alexandra's law is one law that has been going up against the safety committee for the last 4 years in order to hold these drug dealers that are selling illicit fentanyl. Not just, I don't want to say a regular drug dealer, but a dealer that knows that he's selling fentanyl and it results in a death. So we want him to be held accountable. We want him to be able to know that if he is going to knowingly go out there and sell something that someone can die from, he needs to be held accountable for that. So we put ballot measures out. We've been fighting for, like I said, 4 years. Alexandra's law keeps getting pushed back from the safety committee, from our Senate, because they place the blame upon the user and not the supplier. And while I understand that the user has a part in obviously consuming this product. If you're, for instance, taking an aspirin or a Tylenol and you ask someone, hey, I have a headache, can you give me a Motrin? And you take this Motrin and you die, and then they come back with your toxicology and that Motrin had fentanyl in it. That person that gave it to you should be held responsible. So that's why we push for legislation change. And in November on the ballot, Prop 36 is being revised. We finally got it pushed through legislation and able to be put on the ballot. Prop 36 has already been passed through our state legislation before. That's why we have drug diversion, and they have those classes where they put them in classes to learn how to become drug-free and to step away from that part of their lives. But however, they're going to have a new sector in it that's going to compensate for the fentanyl portion of that bill, which is great, which is amazing for us. So we're really hoping that California steps behind Prop 36 and votes that into accountability. On a more federal level, we have the COSA Act. We support COSA. But break that down for you, is the Kids Online Safety Act. And COSA is federally a law that will federally mandate safety policies and procedures for our social media outlets, such as Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, where they all have monitoring controls, where they all have age limits that, a parent would actually have to be aware. There's just all kinds of different entities to the COSA Act. But that is something that we are hoping that gets supported nationwide, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but anyone can go online to Instagram, to Snapchat or Reddit or somewhere like that, and they can pull up a drug menu and order any controlled substance to your home as easy as you can ordering a pizza. So this is why we push for change.
Oh my gosh, that is so shocking to me. And the fact that you can just order it like that and not have number one, it's all illegal. But number two, the fact that they don't have any safety measures against, especially young people ordering. As an adult, you shouldn't be able to order that anyway because it's illegal. But social media needs to have these kind of safety measures like that. And the fact that it's so new, relatively new, quote unquote, fentanyl abuse and fentanyl related deaths is so new within the last, I think, like 5 to 10 years, it seems like.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So, and the fact that it's so new, to me, it's always amazing that when something is so new and just out there, there's obviously no control of it. And then now that's becoming basically an epidemic, that so many young people and normal adults are dying from it, that there needs to be a control and there needs to be changes. So being that you advocate for legislative changes is amazing. So props to you, Amber.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And talking about the increase of fentanyl and opioid-related deaths, how has that increased over the last few years?
Dramatically. Over the past few years, fentanyl deaths have increased to become the number one killer of Americans ages 14 to 45 in the United States. So the number one killer. And when I say number one, it's, that surpasses cancer, AIDS, diabetes, heart disease. It used to be every 11 minutes. When we first started, it went from every 14 minutes to every 11 minutes. Now it's every 5 minutes in the United States. Somebody is dying of an opioid overdose or poisoning. So that's the equivalent of over 100,000 people a year. So that's like 14 Boeing 747s just dropping out of the sky every year. And they each hold over 400 passengers per plane. So, that's an amazing number. And there's no, our podcast or our PSA, there's nothing on a federal level that's being done for awareness. So it's really our grassroots organization that are changing the narrative and opening that up for discussion, are spreading awareness, and are making changes with our legislation.
I think it's really sad that there's so much trauma and tragedy happening out of these opioid and fentanyl related deaths, that there has to be good coming out of it. And your story, Richard's passing, and so many people's parents passing, children passing, it has to be good coming out of it. And like you said, you guys are changing the narrative, you are educating the public and educating young people about this, because it's scary and kids don't know. And I've seen in the news that the distributors are actually marketing towards younger generation. The packaging, right?
Yeah, and candies and whatnot.
Yes, and they change the colors and they make them, look like Skittles or Smarties. Fentanyl has now been found in every substance. So we're talking, marijuana, of course, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, the pressed pills. It's been found in edibles. So in those little gummy things that they have with THC and things in them, they've been found in that. And, there's no way to govern all that out there. There's no way to eradicate this drug. Even if we close the borders tomorrow, the mass amount of fentanyl is already here and has been here. And so the only way that we can help people the most is by educating them, making them aware, and giving them the tools in case this happens to someone they love or know, or they're even around. You can be in the grocery store. We have our weekly breakfast meeting for the chamber, and we have it in a local restaurant. And I'm not going to say any names or anything, but we, go there weekly. And behind the restaurant, there was an incident back there where someone had an overdose of fentanyl. And if they would have had naloxone on scene, they could have been able to treat the individual faster than, waiting on EMS, because EMS services, it's a 2 to 3 minute window with a fentanyl related overdose or poisoning. So if more people choose to have naloxone on site or in their car, or even in, keep one in your purse, because you never know when that's going to arise. Now, the individual ended up making it. EMS came and they were, able to, I'm not exactly sure the outcome, but this was an unhoused individual. So that's why we go out in the community. That's why, we have the safe use supplies where we can give them testing strips to make sure if they are choosing to use a substance, they will have the opportunity to test it to see if there is fentanyl in it. We also have test strips for xylazine, which is a drug on the street known as Trank. Xylazine or Trank is a horse tranquilizer. And for some reason, somebody got a hold of it one day and thought it would be a good idea to start, sharing this with the public. And unfortunately, naloxone, or Narcan, as it's known on the streets, does not work on xylazine. And then you have another drug that is on the scene. It's on the East Coast now. Hopefully, we're trying to make sure everybody's aware of it. That's called nitazines. Nitazines, or nitazines, I guess you could say, but we call it nitazine. It's also an opioid-like medication that's illicitly manufactured. However, Narcan does not work on that either. So the key is education. That way you're aware of the risks involved, because there is no safe way to experiment with drugs.
So let's say someone out there is listening and, they've participated and they've taken these kind of drugs before. How would someone know the symptoms of a overdose or a potential, fentanyl poisoning? What are the symptoms, for someone who hasn't experienced that, or even and I'll put myself out there. I haven't visually seen someone in an overdose or, going into an overdose. So how would I educate myself? Obviously you've been through it, Amber. So educate Mike and I. What are the symptoms? What does someone look like when they're going into that?
Well, the symptoms of an opioid overdose or poisoning, it is slow or shallow breathing. So it blocks the receptors in your brain that's telling you to breathe. So they're not able to breathe. It's blocking that reception. So without blood flow or in your system, oxygenated blood flow, their lips are going to turn blue. Their nails may turn blue. Their breaths are going to become very slow, very challenged, very shallow. Pinpoint pupils. So if their eyes are closed or if they're open, instead of having a nice big black pupil in the middle, it's going to be like a pinpoint. Cold or clammy skin. Their skin can become cold or clammy because they're not getting that good blood flow of oxygenated blood through their system. And unresponsiveness. So I like to tell people unresponsiveness, meaning, hey, you're like shaking them or you're hollering to them, hey, wake up, what's going on with you? And they're not answering. that's unresponsive. So what we like to say is if this is happening, please call 911 immediately and administer Narcan. That way you're administering the Narcan, you're on the phone with 911. So you're giving them that first dose of help, and then you wait 2 to 3 minutes. If they have not came around, you may give them another dose. If you know CPR, you may begin that as well. But help is on the way because you initiated that 911 call, and hopefully by this time, the paramedics can arrive and take over. We'd like to make sure that people know that there's no danger in administering naloxone or Narcan to someone if you're not sure that they may be having an overdose. And I like to tell students or people when I do my presentations that it's better life than death. So it's better to administer that at the first signs, like we discussed, because it's not going to hurt them, even if it's like a diabetic, or a seizure or something to that. 2 to 3 grains of illicit fentanyl is enough to kill. So when I say 2 to 3 grains, I want you to think of salt or sugar, because that's literally how much it takes for someone to die.
That's so scary and sobering. And that was one of the questions that I was going to ask too. Obviously in a society nowadays where people are sue happy, families are sue happy when they find out you did something, you were related to somehow, the situation at hand. But really, if you compare it to it, it is life or death. And you could be saving someone's child, someone's son, daughter. It's someone's related, relative. And like for me, I would not be able to live with myself had I known, okay, if I was standing there and I could have, if I had Narcan with me, I could have saved someone, call 911, obviously, but those 2 to 3 minutes, like what you said, I would, it would mess my brain if I knew I could have helped, but I couldn't because I didn't have Narcan with me. So it's very powerful that you say that too, because we do need the vision. 2 to 3 little grains of salt is just the same as the fentanyl can kill someone. That's very scary.
Sure is.
Yes. And we also have community resource cards. So when I'm out either doing harm reduction, passing out our safe use supplies, or whether we're at school doing presentations, I make sure that every person has a community resource card. And the reason that I do that is because, it gives crisis hotline, county resources, suicide, domestic violence hotline, etc. But it also has a quote on the bottom of it that we put, don't be afraid to call 911, because you are protected from legal punishment by California's Good Samaritan law. And then it talks about the section of the penal code. When contacting emergency services, you are protected. Most people don't get the help that they need because cohorts never call. So I say, look out for each other. Right. Even if you're there and you're going through it, you're scared to call, oh my gosh, we used together, or, they had drugs, or I may, or even if you're on the street with someone and you're scared to do anything to help them, because like you said, people are so, sue happy these days. You're protected by that Good Samaritan law. So if you administer naloxone and they still pass away, you're not going to be held accountable. If you were using with them, a lot of times in schools, students experiment together, or youth, they experiment together with a friend. Hey, I got this. Let's try it together. One of them may pass away. And there's been times when that family member or loved one has been just dropped off in someone's yard, and they've been passing away in the yard because the person that they were around was scared to call 911. They didn't know that they would be protected, or they sat there hours waiting and trying to figure out, what do I do because I'm so scared. And meanwhile, that loved one is there, unaccounted for, not called, where they might have been able to be revived or something. So we like to make sure everyone knows about the Good Samaritan law. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, even I didn't know about that. I heard of it before, on TV and stuff, but I didn't know that California had that. So that's very good to know that you are protected, even though you were there with that person that OD'd. And it could have been you. It could have been me. It could have been Mike, anything, so you are protecting someone too. And you are doing the right thing by calling 911, even though you were, I say you, me, if I was the one doing that, could have been anybody. And hopefully, let's say if I was using, which I don't, but I'm using myself as an example, I would want someone to call 911 if I didn't know that I was going through an ODing, just the same as hopefully the other person would do that for me. So yeah, it's definitely educating the public about that.
Plus, that's the only right thing to do in the first place.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about, I wanted to ask another question too. Are people aware of the dangers of illicit fentanyl and the risks of experimentation or substance use?
A lot of people are not aware that fentanyl is in the substance that they're using. And it's a really big thing right now with methamphetamine users because they're using methamphetamine and people are mixing fentanyl with it. Because they have a tolerance up already, they may not die for their first use, but that second time may be enough to kill them. And I like to give the example of just like when people are taking these pills and things, I want you to think of making chocolate chip cookies, right? Because everybody out in the world has made chocolate chip cookies. So you make your batter and then you get to the ready where you're ready to dump your chocolate chips in, okay? Now let's think about that. We have our dough ready and we're just going to grab the bag of chocolate chips and we're going to dump them in. We're not going to count how many chocolate chips that we're putting into this batch of cookies. And then what do? We take a scoop, and we put it in there and we take the scoop and we scoop our cookie dough and we put it on the tray and then we pop it in the oven and what happens? Those chips melt a little bit. The cookie spreads open, right? And then we take the cookies out and we take a bite of that cookie. Now, as you take a bite of that cookie, you may only get 2 to 3 chips on the one side. When you take a bite of the other side of the cookie, you may get 12 chocolate chips on the one side. So there's no way to know how many chocolate chips you're getting, just like the drug dealers aren't going to stop and count or measure what they're putting in these pills. So you may take half of that pill and you may survive or you may not. It's like playing Russian roulette with your life. You may do a little bit of, say the substance that you're using, whether it be, cocaine or methamphetamine. You may do a little bit of it and then be okay. And then the next time you go to do a little bit more, you may die. So the drug dealers, they don't care. You're just a number to them. You're just a dollar sign. And they're just looking for a customer and more money, unfortunately.
That visualization that you provide, that really makes it so, to me, it makes sense. Like, you don't know what you're getting, number one, when you're doing it. It could be, like you said, it could just be like marijuana, it could be meth, whatever it is, but you don't know if it's laced or not. And, number one, when you're in that mindset, you're not thinking straight, obviously, because you're already doing drugs, illicit drugs. But then now you don't know. You don't know if it's just a little bit of fentanyl. You don't know if there's any fentanyl, or it could be 2 to 3 grains. That could be enough to kill someone. And in the news, I've seen that a lot. It's accidental overdose, that they don't know that it was laced with fentanyl. That's the scary thing too.
Absolutely. And even if they choose to make that decision to do drugs like cocaine or marijuana for various reasons, because there are underlying reasons or modalities that send them there in the first place, but they're not intending to die. So if someone is, taking a Percocet, they're not intending to die from it. If someone is smoking a blunt or a joint and it's laced with fentanyl, they're not intending to die. It's a scary landscape out there.
It definitely is. And, going back when I was growing up as a kid, we always heard about say no to drugs. That was all that was taught to kids. And, now flash forward 30, 40 years, how has that changed? How has the landscape of drug use changed since then?
Oh my gosh, it has changed. I mean, like we talked about the different types of drugs that are out there. The era of experimentation is over with. The concern isn't addiction anymore because statistics indicate the high likelihood of death. So, I mean, that's that 7 out of 10 pills sold on the street now contain illicit fentanyl. When I first lost my son, September of 2020, it was 4 out of 10 pills. So now the landscape has changed, and now it's 7 out of 10 pills sold on the street contain a lethal dose of fentanyl. So it's inevitable that, it may not happen the first time, but it's eventually going to catch up. And so I tell children or youth when I'm educating them that if you're lucky enough to survive the first time and you don't die, then they have a customer for your life, not theirs, but only for your life, because now you're playing that game of Russian roulette every time you go back and pick up more.
That's such a scary picture to paint. And I'm glad that you're educating children, you're educating the young people about this. You're going to schools and letting people know, look out for these signs, these symptoms, because like you said, it is inevitable that if they do the drugs, 7 out of 10 pills sold. Now, in like a year or two from now, it could be eight to 9 out of 10 pills. And that's so scary that it progressed so fast in the last 4 years. And it could be even faster that we don't really realize it, because then it's not really put out on the street, on the news just yet, until it's actually already happened.
Or they still keep it hush-hush so nobody actually knows about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that, back to that legislation part, we want to make sure that, the police departments that we work with, and I love our local police department because, they've changed their protocols as well. I mean, when this first all started happening, they weren't aware as well. So then they have to adapt and modify their investigation and procedure policies, so now they're understanding that, okay, there's so many people out there, this may not have been an overdose. It's important to have that initial investigation, because I didn't know that when my son passed away. Going back and looking at, his Snapchat and his text, he asked the person, before you roll up in front of my house, bro, is this real? And they were like, yeah, bro, I got you. Well, they didn't have him. I have him in an urn now because of those drug menus that are available.
Oh, goodness, Amber. Know that you're doing good in honor of Richard. Every time I see you, the first time we met, I asked you what your organization does. It always struck a chord with me that what you're doing is honoring Richard. And it's sad that his life had to be sacrificed for that. But there's so many other countless lives that you don't even realize you're affecting. And that's a powerful thing. You have to know. And I hope that you know that you are impacting people. And like so many other things we come across people that leave a little impact in our lives, but I hope that you know that you are changing lives, and people won't tell you. I think that's the sad thing too. They remember all the negative stuff, but the good that comes out of this, people won't really say, you know what, you saved my son's life, you saved my daughter, my mom, whoever it was, just by hearing what you said at the schools and things like that. So I want you to know that you are impacting people. They just won't tell you.
Yeah, you're impacting people on an everyday basis.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I tell people it's too late for my son, and no parent should ever have to give their child CPR. No parent should ever have to give their child Narcan. It's too late for my son. But I can't save him, but I may save yours. And if I'm not saving your child or grandchild, niece or nephew, then you have the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to pass that along and save someone else. So that's why our organization was founded, to let everyone know just how lethal and dangerous this is. It really should be labeled a weapon of mass destruction, because fentanyl is in everything. In the fake pills we discussed, it's in vape pens, not just marijuana vape pens, but tobacco vape pens. It's been found in weed wraps and edibles. Of course, the other drugs, methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, unfortunately, it's in everything. So I do encourage everyone to carry naloxone or Narcan on the street, or, wherever you are. Have testing strips. If you need safe use supplies, I have menstrual kits, I have wound care kits, I have safe use supplies, I have naloxone. Reach out to me. Send me an email, send me a text. Hey, because I'm always out in someone's neighborhood. I can drop it off or get it to you one way or the other, or even put it in the good old mail system.
And I know that you're going to be having 2 events in August here in our local area. So August 21st, you're going to be at Weston Park, and that's going to be the 2nd annual National Fentanyl and Awareness and Education Day at Weston Park there in, is that Hemet or San Jacinto?
It's in Hemet. It's used to be old downtown Hemet. It's by Santa Fe Street. It's actually between Thompson and Taylor, but close to Santa Fe and Steve's Burgers. If you're from the Valley, you got to know Steve's Burgers.
Awesome. And then you're also going to be at the Lake Elsinore Storm. They're going to be having a baseball fundraiser there. That's going to be August 31st. So that's in Lake Elsinore. We love the Storm. It's a beautiful facility. So that should be really fun. A baseball fundraiser. So is that other vendors are going to be there just the same at Western Park, right?
at Weston Park, we have vendors lined up. We have some food trucks. We have some motivational speakers. We have some fancy treats that are coming out. We're going to have a candlelight vigil at the end. So anyone that may have lost someone to fentanyl or an opioid or any drug-related overdose or poisoning, please come out, bring a poster or picture of your loved one. We would love to pay honor to them. We're going to have guest speakers. Our mayor came out last year. He's, due to come out. We have the DEA, the district attorney's office, the sheriff's department, mental health facilities. We have detox facilities, rehabs, long-term recoveries. We have all kinds of great resources that are going to be there. So educational and yet fun at the same time. But come out and get some resources. We'd love to see you guys, have you share your stories about your loved ones, even pick up resources while you're there, and just have a good evening. August 21st, that is our National Fentanyl Awareness and Education Day. We are having a movement across the nation. Facing Fentanyl has taken over Times Square with our fentanyl and our pictures of our babies. We have teams, Northern California, Southern California, in the south of the United States, in the north. We have programs everywhere for this. So yes, it's going to be great. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you so much again for having us here. It's been an honor. You guys are really great. I love to hear you on the radio. I'm a big country music fan, so I like that. And then sometimes I get into my crazy days where I need, some alternative out there. So I kind of switch between you guys. So I love it.
There you go.
Awesome, Amber. We so enjoyed talking to you, and I'm glad that we're able to help you put the message out there to fight against fentanyl use and educating the public, because that's so important nowadays. So definitely visit Amber's website, outoftheashesorganization.net, or email Amber. Her email is aroyer, that's AROYER, at outoftheashesorganization.com, or even easier, just find her on Instagram, outoftheashes.org, and send her a message. Like you said, Amber, you have Narcan available. You can drop it off. You can mail it off. Even if you're not in the area, that's okay. She'll mail it out to you. The important thing is educating the public, having that Narcan out there, and knowing the symptoms. So I'm so happy that we were able to help put the message out for you, Amber.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mike and Phebe Show on Alternative Twist Radio. If you missed any past episodes, just search the Mike and Phebe Show or Alternative Twist Radio on any major podcast app.